Hello and welcome. I am the Letter Hack, and with me now are two very special guests from the Levers Movies versus Capitalism podcast. It's Rivera, and Frank Cappello. Guys, thank you so much for being here. How are you?
We're good. I mean, I don't mean
Oh,
to speak for you too, Frank, but I think we're good. I think we're
I'm
both
I'm great. I am very excited to be here. I am a little hungry. I did not give myself time to cook or eat dinner before this, but other than that, I'm ready to go.
if you want, you can cook and eat dinner while we do this. I'm going to be drawing, so I'll be sort of distracted myself. So it's up
I would
to
have to
you.
take my whole
Don't starve.
my whole my
Okay,
whole rig into the
fine. It's
kitchen.
fine.
You mean you
Yeah,
don't
yeah.
have one of those? I watched the other day, I found it so relaxing. It was a TikTok of someone making Thanksgiving meal in their dorm room, and they had all these devices to, like it was everything was done in front of the camera, so it was like I'd never seen it. It was, like a pan that self-heated without any it was, like, I guess, just
Oh,
electric in itself. The whole meal. Macaroni and
wow.
cheese, sweet
Wow.
potatoes, the whole thing right there. So I'm just my point is, Frank, I think you're slacking.
Okay. I
You
think I
can
would
make the
rather
meal if you want.
I would rather not eat Thanksgiving than cook it in a dorm room, but okay.
Nice. Um, okay, I've been letting my viewers know about your podcast for a while now, and
Oh, that's
Oh,
awesome.
thank you.
I, yeah, sure, and we've even had some crossover as far as guests go. Jessica Burbank,
Mhm.
Jordan Yule, David Sirota, of course, Jason
Nina
Miles. I'm
Turner?
having. Oh yeah, yes, absolutely, and Harvey K next week. So
Oh,
we share viewership.
our
I'm
best
pretty
friend.
sure. Yeah,
Oh, I
I'm
Um
really
can't wait
looking
for
forward
your
to that one.
drawing of Harvey.
I was working on it today. So, but I do want to just, just in case there's somebody out there who isn't aware, I'll bring them up to speed quickly. Movies versus Capitalism examines the crucial intersection between pop culture and politics, unpacking the ideological messages baked into some of your favorite movies. Anyone who watches my show knows I love this. This is exactly what I want to do here. More with comic books and movies, but all pop culture. And I just found this out today. According to Spotify's annual Wrap, I'm in your 19% fan base. So for what
Oh,
it's
hell
worth,
yeah.
Hey, that's awesome.
I got like eight
Right, we
hours I've listened to you on Spotify this
That's
year.
so cool.
So,
right, we've got
and it's
special
like my
perks
job.
going out to our top 19%
Oh, cool.
listeners. So that's good you just made it.
Great.
That's amazing.
Nice. Okay, awesome. I'll look forward to that, and I'll get you my address later. But you do have a highly relatable and very interesting podcast. It's movies and capitalism. And I think that it's almost like tough for me to like where do I start, right? Do I ask you about your love of movies? Where did your anti-capitalist tendencies originate? How did you meet each other? How did you form the podcast? So I'll start like I always do, and get your origin stories. So while I get in on tonight's drawing, maybe you could just tell us a bit about yourselves, your background, and then how the podcast came about. And really, if we're so casual here, either one of you can go first. We could talk over each other, whatever you want. It's all good.
Oh, great. I love a talkover. That's
You
my Jewish Puerto Rican side. I love a talkover. So,
Oh, great. Okay.
oh wow, this
yeah.
is so exciting to see
And
live.
I
Okay,
oh my
I'm
god, I
gonna
look
try and focus.
so buff. Thank you,
This
man.
is
That's
this is in
I look
this
so
is the
hot. Oh my god.
this is the Bruce Timm animated style. Do you know Batman the animated series?
Yes, I
Justice
do,
League
yeah.
animated series, Bruce Timm. This is in that style, and then it'll be,
Okay.
this won't be very easy to see probably, but here's, like, everyone I've interviewed
Oh,
in that
wow, that
style.
is so
Yeah,
cool.
That looks awesome.
Oh,
so,
wow,
anyway,
that
Right.
is so cool. Okay, I'm gonna try not to be
over
too
50.
distracted and try to answer
Uh,
your
okay.
question. But we're actors, or we met in acting school, so we do appreciate an image of ourselves.
Oh, great, okay.
That's true. Yeah, the vain parts of us are just absolutely exploding right now. Yours looks great too, Rivka. Uh,
Yeah, thanks.
yeah. Do you wanna do our origin story?
I can start and then you jump in and fill in the parts. I
Sure.
guess as I mentioned, Frank and I met in acting school. Straight out of high school, both knew that we were called to
To the
to
to the
stage
stage and screen.
the stage and screen. And no, I mean, quite seriously, I think what was so I think one of the things we both loved about going to acting school is that you were among other young artists who felt just as passionate about that fact. And I will say one of the best things that that experience gave was this amazing group of people and Frank, and
Mhm.
we've just been lucky to stay very close to those friends and collaborators and sort of grow all together. Um, and I remember, like, we used to I think when we first met Frank, we used to just, like, go back to the dorm and binge watch TV. I remember binge watching
Yeah.
Lost and binge watching just, like,
We watched a lot of Lost. This was like peak
what
Lost, you
Yeah.
know, the peak of Lost's popularity before it really fell off. But
Yeah.
yeah, that a lot of that was a lot of where our early connections came from was, watching TV and film and then talking about it and just spending so much time together watching, unpacking, discussing and theater as well because we were at a predominantly theater
Mhm.
school. Um and we were fortunate in that in our school we had one class where we would see a play and then they would force us to speak critically, not force us like they were holding us against our will, but then the whole class was like, how do you speak critically about this, like how do you contextualize this for
Mm.
the day and the era for which this is being presented.
Wait, what class was that?
That was what was it called? Was it conservatory something? Do you remember? It was like on Mondays, like right
Oh,
before
yeah, yeah,
dinner,
yeah. Okay,
conservatory
yeah.
hour or some shit like that.
Yeah.
Um, so we just always loved doing that. And then, um, you know, the thing that happens after theater school is you go to either Hollywood or New York and you begin your professional career as actors, which is what we did. We both moved to Los Angeles after school. I was there a little bit longer. I was there for about 11 years. Rivka, how long were you in LA
And you
for?
went first because
Yeah,
I
but only
thought I
about
was
like a few
going
months.
I know, but mine was I guess I think of it that way because my it felt like it was very dramatic for me because I was convinced we're both from the East Coast. Frank's
Hmm.
from Jersey, I'm from New York, and I was like, I remember the first time going to LA thinking it was the weirdest place with the billboards, and I was just like, "This is no, I'm a New Yorker through and through." And then I came home and everyone was seeing New York for the first time, and I was like, "What is going on? Everyone's so excited," and I don't feel any of that, and I made a hard turn to move to LA, also because Frank we had a lot of friends there. We all lived in a building together, kinda like it was very cute. We all lived in one big build we all had our own apartments, but we all had a lived in the same building, so it was really fun. But I made a hard turn and moved out there, and then, yeah, I left before you. I was there for 6 or 7 years.
Okay. And then I was there for 11 years.
Mhm.
And I don't want to speak for Rivka, but my time in Hollywood in the entertainment industry, I was working as like a comedy writer and actor. Um, and had a lot of fun. I don't regret a single moment of it, but it's definitely a business. It's definitely, Hollywood is in the business of making money first and foremost, not art. That's the secondary consideration. The first consideration is, will this thing make money? um so yeah, so I spent 11 years in LA, and then it was right before the pandemic where I decided I wanted to change, sort of career paths. But um that was sort of my personal experience working within the capitalist machinery of Hollywood, which was, I guess, radicalizing in its own ways. But I mean, in terms of politics, just like real, like, traditional politics, actors, theater school, very liberal place. So I know we've always had very liberal, progressive politics. And then I think, like many people, it was or at least for me, the Bernie 2016 campaign really sort of was the first time I saw I wouldn't necessarily call Bernie's politics well, I guess they are anti-capitalist in a degree. The most palatable version of anti-capitalist you could do as, a United States senator running for president. But hearing him talk about the consolidation of corporate power for me, the first time I was like, oh, that's shit. That's what it is. And it was like a real kind of like aha moment. And then from there, I just started diving more into theory and like even more leftist, anti-capitalist, socialist, communist politics. Just tried to absorb as much as I could.
I was listening, Frank, but I am not gonna lie, I'm like very mesmerized by my own cartoon. You were talking and I'm like, we look like maybe we should look like Marvel characters. I was
Maybe
like,
I should get
know.
maybe I should get my hips removed. And then
I think that all the time. It would be fun to have like an animated version though, right? Like just one episode, you do like an animated movie and the whole podcast is animated.
Oh,
oh yeah.
wow. That would
Be
be
expensive
awesome.
probably.
It would
Really?
yeah, it'd be a little bit expensive.
We've got the model sheet anyway.
Wow. Okay. I heard Bernie 2016. I think I know
I
where
was just
you were.
talking about like my experience
No, I
in
got you. I
the
wasn't like
entertainment
completely,
industry.
totally. I wasn't like actually totally. That would be wild if I was like totally zoned out. I'm just looking at my cartoon. Yeah. Well, you know what occurred to me when you were talking, Frank, is I don't know, like you and I didn't start talking politics until 2020, really.
No, we'd always like kind
We'd
of
talked, but I don't think
yeah.
we like talked. I mean, I don't think I was like, you know what I mean? I think that was also part of the radicalization of that time is like we were all talking
Mm-hmm.
so much amongst each other. But I'd say that was like that was sort of like the beginning of well, you kind of conceived the idea for the podcast
Oh yes,
first.
yes.
So like I don't it was like around I mean, it was kind of around that time, but I think it also made sense because we did study groups together. We were just like in more like focused ways really talking about politics and like starting to study and then thus get more critical about media and having those conversations in a more direct way.
Yeah. Well, we also weren't living in the same city. I recently moved back to the East Coast to
Right.
New York in 2021. So like, yeah, we weren't living in proximity. We weren't talking as regularly. And then I think it was, around that time when I moved back here and we started like getting into more political conversations
Mhm.
because I was kind of like on my own radicalization journey and I didn't
Right.
know that I didn't know that you were having like a similar journey. So when we
Mhm.
started getting into it was just great to find like another comrade, and not only another comrade but like someone I've known since I was 18 years old. um and
Wow,
then
that's wild.
I fucking tell me,
But
sorry
a
Matt,
baby.
can we curse
You
on
can
this? Do you
cuss,
prefer?
yeah. Yeah, I'm gonna
Oh
make a
hell
compilation
yeah.
of people saying, "Can
Cursing.
I swear on here?"
Oh.
Because everyone asks that, but it's after they've done it, which I think is great.
Mhm.
Wow,
um
great color choices, by the way, on the clothes.
mhm. Yeah, I
There's some
usually go with
costume design involved.
I do usually go with an earth tone like that, so this is accurate.
Okay.
um And I'd been working in and around podcasts since I moved to LA pretty much. But though never hosted one myself, I produced many, many, many podcasts, but never once was like, do you know what? People need me to pick up the mic.
Hmm.
And, and then I was just thinking did this idea just kind of like came to me one day, late 2020, early 2021. It's like, hey, why don't we? I was like, I love movies, and I'm now loving applying like a material analysis, a Marxist analysis to the stuff that I'm engaging with. Like, wouldn't it be cool to do that with movies?
Mhm.
And reached out to Rivka, and I was like, hey, got this idea, and she was on board, and here we are now.
And
That's
here
great.
we are.
Yeah, it's just like it. eh, It's amazing you've known each other since you were 18, but that's got to give you some like confidence that you can rely on each other, right? Like you would know by now if you were going to be disappointed at some
Yeah.
point collaborating. Um, do you share like all the responsibilities or do you have defined roles, like even behind the scenes? Like, does one of you invite the guests? Does one of you do all the editing? How do you balance that?
Yeah. Well, we share, but we have very defined roles. And we're both, I mean, I'm a Capricorn. And Frank, we can't figure out what it is in your chart, but Frank is unbelievably organized. And
I am, which
so
is uncharacteristic for a Pisces.
that's what I'm saying. There's got to be
Mhm.
something else hidden in your chart or something.
There's
Got like
some,
a house in Taurus or something like that, right?
yeah,
Yeah.
some
Or your
moon.
parents lied to you about your birth date and you're like a totally different
I
sign.
damn, that'd be an incredible scam if they were able to pull that off. Although I was a home birth, so you know,
Mm.
it's
Oh,
possible.
right. That's so interesting. Were you
Yeah.
born in we're about to get deep into some knowledge of each other, but like were you
Yeah.
born in water?
Yes, I was born in a bathtub.
Okay. This is
It was
important
a
for
water
everyone
birth.
to know
Yes, it was
because
intentional.
That's fascinating.
it's fascinating. I'm going to give you some deep theater knowledge. We may have mentioned this on the pod before, but not here. In theater school, we do this thing where we in our clown, I guess you would call it clown movement class. It's a really big theater school thing. And so if you're ever around theater people and they're like water, fire, earth, air, what are you? Like it's a movement exercise
Mhm.
and everyone has one that's kind of like their natural state, their core most are like I'd say it like most are earth. A lot of people are earth. I'm earth, basic. Frank Frank was the only I think the only water or like a true our movement teacher would always just be like, "Frank, you are
A pure water.
a pure water." And I can't
So
believe you I
ridiculous.
mean, and I'm like, this is your water origin story.
Oh, big time,
Explains
yeah.
everything.
It
Yeah.
Mhm.
explains everything.
Yeah. And it was intentional. My mom, like, wanted to have
That's
me
awesome.
in a water birth. It wasn't like, "Can't get to the hospital, I guess
Oh
we'll
my
hop in the bathtub."
no, I mean, yeah, I'm sure that happens, but yeah,
Yeah.
that's
Um,
awesome. That's beautiful.
yeah, it was lovely. I once asked
Apparently,
my
it's a
mom,
very nice way to be born. It's like
that's
makes the
what
transition not so rough.
that was her whole thought behind it. My mom was a very, new agey, like, let's get weird, let's try some stuff. At one point she actually got to find out more about this, Riv, you would love this. At one point she did almost join a cult, and
Oh, I
my
love
dad
that.
went with her to like a meeting, and she was like, "You got to come, like, I want you to like get involved here." And my dad went to one meeting. He was like, "This is a fucking cult. We're getting out of here. This is bullshit. I don't know what these people are talking about." Um,
Yeah.
but yeah, to get back to your original question, Matt. Yeah, we share we
Wow.
we share some
Departure,
responsibilities.
sorry. Yeah.
We both do some booking. I edit everything, and then Rivka handles like all the social media stuff.
Yes.
Yeah.
Is there any one particular aspect that you guys like the best? Is it having a co-host, interacting with guests, or maybe some of the behind the scenes stuff? Any one in particular aspect?
I think all of those are fun. I would say, I mean, in terms of like the doing the show, I think it's really fun because we do prepare our thoughts. We kind of come with a perspective and I really like preparing. We give a little context as you know at the top of the episode for the year and I think that's always fun to prepare. But I think it's really fun to surprise each other with takes, that
Mhm.
I really enjoy that. I enjoy when a guest comes on and you're like, "Wow, I did not see that." There's really obvious ways to view a film through this lens and then sometimes you'll be like, "Whoa, I did not see that coming," or "I never saw that." So I think those are really fun moments for me. What about you, Frank?
Yeah, those specific moments where something like surprising or unintentionally funny happens, but I'd say like the interviews themselves, like just the
Mhm.
moment when we actually get together with the guest and then get into the meat of the conversation. I just love talking about movies. I've loved it since I was a little kid. So yeah, getting to actually do the conversation part, that's my favorite. My least favorite is editing.
Mm.
That was my next question.
Hmm.
Is that how do you stay motivated? What gets you to, you know, the editing table?
Deadlines usually,
Yeah.
a paycheck. I mean, I've been editing podcasts for so long. I've gotten fairly fast at it, so it's usually just like I know I'm going to key in going to sit here, cup of coffee. I have everything on high speed now, so I'm just like scrubbing through things and cleaning up little things here and there. Yeah, it's just like one of those things that's like, I have to do it, so I guess I got to do it. There's one thing that I would love AI to take off of my plate.
I think we're on the way.
Yeah, I want
Yeah, we're almost
AI
there.
to do. I want AI to do the menial stuff, not the fun stuff.
Yes,
Mhm.
exactly.
Otherwise, I don't need it. Okay, so art, movies, it can fight against negative aspects of, government, politics, whatever, capitalism. And sometimes I hear people say, and I should mention, there are links to all of your stuff in the description of this video, so everyone should scroll down and check that out. And you did a great Ask Me Anything episode this week. And so you might have talked about this a little bit. Sometimes people will say they're communist. And I'm like, well, you live in America. How does that work, right? Because aren't we capitalists by default? And so I wonder, have you ever thought about that, like in the context of movies? And the movie industry literally be anti-capitalism while existing by default inside of capitalism? Like, is that possible? Because I know, like, you could have worker-owned aspects of it, but like, could the industry ever, like, be purely not capitalism? Is that even possible? Or, because it's something I think people strive for. When somebody says I'm communist, it's like, well, you hope to be, I think. And
Sure.
maybe I'm nitpicking, but do you know what I mean? Like, can the movie industry ever be more than just an art form that critiques it? Can it be something more than just the capitalist machine or part
We
of the
actually,
machine?
yeah, we actually talk about this exact dynamic quite a bit on the podcast about how, the traditional Hollywood studio system and TV system is, like you're saying, it is a capitalist enterprise through and through. So anything that gets created within that will automatically, like, or any art that's created within that, even if it's anti-capitalist art or art that has anti-capitalist messaging, let's say like the Lego movie, something like that, something that's like fairly innocuous but has some pretty radical themes baked into it. Even something like that is going to be inherently contradictory because it was produced within a capitalist framework and can only go so far usually in its critique of the system. Um, and then there's also the dynamic that we've talked about that, uh, it's not our concept. It's from Capitalist Realism, Mark Fisher's book. The idea that anti-capitalist artwork or art, film, TV, whatever, can sometimes negate actual like revolutionary movement because I think he says it performs our anti-capitalism for us and thus gives the audience the sense that they are doing something, the sense that they are, I'm recognizing the problems in the system because I'm watching this movie. Oh, that feels good. But really, at the end of the day, there's been no material change to the system itself. So there's like that one aspect of it. But then, yeah, Riv, do you have anything to add? I was also going to bring up
Yeah.
Meme TV, but like I think that was the
Well, I
next
think it's such an interesting question because I think there's something really true about when until we change the whole system, everything inside of it is like, yeah, we can create our interior systems that are anti-capitalist, worker owned. You can resist the capital structure, but in terms of like if you're talking about Hollywood and the system, you're not changing that. You're creating something outside of it. You're not necessarily like with the hope being like, I don't want to fuck with that, so come over here. And I think there's something to that, but I do think that um it's the intersection of like and I've been thinking about this a lot with the SAG after strike and looking at what we got back to ratify. Like I personally voted no on the ratification of our contract because it was so not good enough. And the fight now is like the conversation of like, well, what do we do? Like this is at least we got something, and that sort of opened up my eyes to, we have to stop thinking about the entertainment industry, and it's really about, like, opening up to the intersections of, like, us as an industry and us as workers beyond just, like, siloed thinking about our industries separate, and I think that's gonna be where we move. I think the opportunity of AI might actually move us towards a general strike. Like, that might be the catalyst because it's affecting all of us, if that makes sense. So, like, this isn't,
Mm.
sometimes I think it's easy to be like, "Well, I have to change, do my anti-capitalist," and, like, until you're right, until we're out of a system of capitalism, I don't know. I think it's still important to resist and to explore and to be creative and, as Tony Cade Bambara says, make this revolution irresistible. But yeah, I think you're right. It's like we can't get lost in that. There is always still has to be connected to the bigger struggle so we can make this shift globally.
But then there are, places like Means TV.
Mhm.
Matt, do you know Means TV? I'm
Yeah.
yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Which, and for any of your audience that doesn't know, it is a worker-owned streaming platform. So, and they do everything from development to production to distribution and everything. And they have a fully cooperative model. Everyone who either works for Means TV or produces work for Means TV becomes a owner of Means TV. So they are building they have built, not are building, they have built the alternate model to what the traditional Hollywood studio system is. I mean, they're a streaming platform, so I guess it would be like as opposed to like what Netflix is. So something we've talked about a lot is these alternatives need to be built, and people need to learn about them and engage with them and support them so that larger audiences can then see it and discover their value, and especially their value as an alternative to a traditional capitalist system. And hopefully more and more of that happens over the next years. We just had an interview today. We are speaking to two filmmakers who were talking about trying to figure out a new collective way to distribute independent films. So like
Hmm.
it's in the ether. People are thinking about it. It's like it's right there. I don't know if Hollywood itself gets changed internally. Like that kind of feels like if we only just get the right people voted into the Democratic Party, then we'll be able to change the Democratic Party. Maybe that's possible.
Exactly. Well, but even that, I mean, I think you're right, like, the idea of Hollywood itself was, like, when you talk about Hollywood, sure, you talk about the films and the artists, but you're talking about the industry it was a capitalist built industry, and it's sort of
Mhm.
like that. There needs to be something new that takes over, and we probably won't call it Hollywood anymore.
Yeah.
Still,
Well,
distribution, that's smart because, and I'm sorry, I don't mean to interrupt, but like
Oh, yeah.
as a self-publisher of comic books, distribution is the crux. Um,
mhm.
until very recently, there was a monopoly by a single company, and it was almost to the benefit of independent comic book creators to have the distributor say, "Yeah, we would distribute that," and then take that to the publisher and go, "Well, I can get it distributed through the distributor," and the publisher would be more likely to pick it up. Because if you got it, let's say DC Comics was like, "Oh, yeah, we'll publish this," the distributor might say no. And so if you
Mm,
can,
Yeah.
maybe get the industry by the reins through distribution, because that generally is like, a major aspect of it. But I think in terms of entertainment, because that's what we're talking about, like when it comes to podcasting, there's a lot of viewers would, they say that they want to be educated, but they would rather be entertained most of the time, and I get it. I'm a viewer, I understand. And I had
Sure.
Jean Bajalan on, who is he's on This Is Revolution podcast with Jason Miles. He said, people don't want to eat their veggies. That's how he put it. And
hmm
I see your concept, movies, using movies to talk about important stuff like politics, and it's not just I mean, capitalism is really, it's all connected, right? So you end up talking about a lot of stuff, just and it comes back
mhm.
to capitalism. But the movies is really just like the way to make it, like you were saying earlier, more palatable and more digestible, right? It's sort of like the Trojan horse to getting people to eat their veggies. Do you think like the average podcast host talking about important things like electoral politics, war, right, having an opinion
Mhm.
on violent conflicts around the world, or unions and stuff like that, do you think it's irresponsible of them to discuss and provide information about that stuff without a degree of advocacy, like direct advocacy,
Mm.
or what we call media activism? Do
Mm.
you know what I mean? Like you could
Yeah.
provide the information all day, make it more digestible, but where's the resources? What are the tools? Do you think it's fair of the average online political newsie to
Mm.
to not go that extra step with actual advocacy or activism?
That's a really good, complicated question. I mean, I guess
Yeah, I
I guess
know.
I no, I enjoy it. I like having to think and figure shit
'Cause
out.
people love to
Uh,
talk. People love to
yeah,
just get on the
Yeah.
camera and pontificate, and then you got a
that's true.
million viewers. They're looking to you for direction. What do you got? Are you trying to
Okay, so
change
Mm.
I guess
minds, or you just putting it out there?
so is this in this scenario, are we talking about people who do political commentary as opposed to just straight reporting? Because I
Yeah,
think that like
I think
that's
so,
the one
yeah.
distinction that I would draw is that like if someone is doing just straight reporting, just and adhering by journalistic standards, then in that scenario, it's like no, I'm just presenting the facts in as objective of a way as possible. If it's someone who's making a career off of doing commentary, um, then yeah, I think it does. I think it does behoove them to point people in a productive direction. Otherwise, you're just yelling and riling people up, and then letting them loose. Which I
Mhm.
think I think commentary is valuable. I think people providing their analysis and perspective is definitely valuable. I mean, I we try to go the extra mile of finding practical applications for some of the stuff that we talk about. One feature in our podcast is we ask our guests at the end of every day, like, how do you live your values in your everyday life? And it's a small thing, but we've gotten at this point, like almost 40 different answers, and they range all the way from like, hey, here's this mutual aid group that I work with that you can get involved with, to hey, take more naps during your day. And those are like practical applications that people can use.
Mhm.
So yeah, I think like if someone's doing commentary, it'd be great if they can say like, oh, and by the way, if you're pissed about this thing, here's this great org that is doing work on it.
Yeah, I would agree. I think what I'm thinking is there's such variant of skill level of like people who give political critique, and that's what they do, and we're tuning in to watch how they wrap their brain around a topic, or really how they tackle questions. And I think there's something just like the role of storytelling in theater is like we tune into a movie to practice and rehearse sort of what a character goes through, and you can kind of have that separation, which I guess could is the sort of Mark Fisher point of like the question of catharsis, and then you're done and you're like, well, I did that, so I'm going to bed now. But I do
Mhm.
think I know I've been mm, radicalized just by listening to people talk who are so brilliant and know. I think there's a deep skill in like being able to ask the right questions in life. So I'm thinking of like a Brianna
Mhm.
Joy Gray, like even if there's, and I don't know that she often gives direct action, but even just by the guest she brings in, she to me is like um just brilliant at asking the right questions and genuinely and authentically. And I think just by listening to how she interacts with guests, I've learned a lot about how like it almost like opens up a new way for me to think about the world and my politics and ask different kinds of questions. And I think that's ultimately what criticism is all about is can you ask different kinds of questions that expand your worldview?
See, I always ask, do two things. Do you intend to change minds or just put the information out there for people to do with what they will? And I think you are trying to influence people, right? Um, positively. And
Mhm.
I'll also ask, is there anyone who can change your mind? And I have to assume that your guests are doing that, right? And they're giving you new perspectives and new things to consider and new information to research after the show. And I love the balance between, because I mean, I truly love like just geeking out about movies. It's one of my favorite things to do. But I'm so fascinated by politics and to see how they intersect is just, it's always mind-blowing. I'm always having my mind changed, and I'm always wanting to take the information. I just, like a nerd, I want to take this information
Mhm.
and say, "Did you know this?" to literally everybody, whether they want me to or not. And so I wonder, like, how much reach do you think the average podcast has? Let's
Mm.
say it's a politics podcast, and I don't see why a politician wouldn't tune into your show. And oh, I love movies. Oh, capitalism. I'm in government. Let's listen. Do you
Mhm.
think there's any reach or potential to change the minds of politicians from like just independent online media,
Mm.
like policy? Maybe it's their messaging or strategy. I mean, because
Yeah,
I
and
ask this to everyone, and I get a
mhm.
mix of answers.
I think I guess I don't think of it as so direct as that, but I think our role in the ecosystem, it's like it's a domino effect. I think you hear one thing, you might hear one message in this way over here, and then hear it differently. And maybe it's through the vessel of movies that like that sort of message, it just something clicks. Like I've had conversations with a lot of people who are like, well, I don't necessarily consider myself anti-capitalist, but that made a lot of sense. And I know that movie, and it's a great it's almost Adrienne Marie Brown talks about being a movement doula, and in some ways like it's a way
Mhm,
of being a
mhm.
doula through, because it's like suddenly you're like, well, gosh, that makes a lot of sense, or oh my gosh, I took in that movie and that movie shaped my worldview, and now I'm looking at it totally different. And that can be a
Hmm.
really that can be an like destabilizing enough to be like the wedge, because I think destabilization is really important in the process of radicalization. And like to have your favorite childhood movie, let's say Ghostbusters, be sort of flipped on its head in this way, and you recognize the truth, but you're like, who am I? What was that movie? That's like never how I watch it. And that happens to us all the time, I think, on the podcast. I've
Mhm.
had many moments where I'm like destabilized rewatching a film and realize, I mean, um, You've Got
The
Mail, where
Wizard
you're
of
like,
Oz.
We've got mail.
Oh, that one was wow. Yeah, that was
We've
that
got
was
intense.
mail.
totally destabilizing. Like,
That
what?
that
Who
was
created us? Like, where
It's
absolutely
did
so
shocking.
obvious in hindsight. It's
Yeah,
terrible. Yeah,
but the 90s, we were just like, "Oh god, look how charming Tom Hanks is. He's not an
yeah,
absolute sociopath in this movie."
that was the one. Yeah, but
Yeah,
and
so
also
maybe
the
in little
Wizard of
ways.
Oz recently.
Yeah.
Like that was.
Yeah.
That
I
was
mean,
yeah, that was
I
illuminating.
think now
Francisco
you.
Perez, who was our guest,
Yes,
he's brilliant and explained the entire allegory of the Wizard of Oz to us. Yeah, it was incredible. Yeah, I'll never think about that movie or that story the same way again.
I
Um,
think it's interesting to ponder and I don't know. One of the reasons I asked that question is because I hope that like somebody's going to go back to what they do on Monday and be like, I wonder who's listening. Is it possible that
mhm.
Lindsey Graham loves this movie and is going to tune in? You know what I mean? I don't know. He's just
It's
going through
possible,
Spotify. It could happen.
Wow.
yeah,
I
it's
I'm
wanted to
all
never
be
gonna get on mic the same way again. Be like, is Lindsay listening?
it's all possible. Maybe we'll get a call from Joe Biden one day and he's like, "Listen, Jack, I listened to your Titanic episode." Uh,
that's
anything's
great.
possible. Um,
I'm
yeah, I
stepping down because of you.
yeah, decided not to run again.
Wow.
Could
Yeah.
you
You guys were talking about ice
imagine?
cream, and I
Wow.
just realized I just want to eat ice cream and hang out, and that's what I'm gonna do now. Um,
You know what?
yeah, I
That's
mean,
funny. My first Oh, go ahead. Go ahead.
oh no, no, you go ahead,
I was
man.
just gonna
Please,
say
please,
something
it's your show.
silly. When I first heard movies versus capitalism, I thought to myself, it's something I love and something I hate. I'm gonna make a
Mhm.
podcast called Ice Cream and Cauliflower, but it's not the same because they don't have much to do with each other. But please, so I just I wonder though. I wonder, is there a way for you to measure of results? Do you get feedback? Do you have a
Yeah.
crank file? Do you get lots of emails and stuff? I know you hadn't asked me anything, but outside of that, are people interacting with you? Viewers,
We do,
listeners.
yeah. We get really nice engagement. That's what they call it in the media the media business.
Yeah.
How much engagement are you getting? No, but we do. We get really nice engagement and interactions with our listeners. People write in pretty regularly. We have instances where people say, "Oh my goodness, I never thought about this movie in this context. Like, it, put a lot of things into perspective. I never thought about it this way." Um, and then we also get, the occasional email of like, "You didn't talk about my favorite movie the way I wanted you to talk about it." And
Oh, yeah.
those those are a little less fun to engage with.
Yeah.
But
But then
yeah,
we get
it's
some that are really, I mean, I think it is like it can feel like you're just like you're getting to your speaking out and you don't know who's listening. But the more we've gotten engagement, I feel like when we get on mic and we're talking, I can feel some of those audience members in this, like it feels like we're in dialogue with them. And I love getting to know people when they write in and share really deep thoughts. And often you
Mhm.
asked about like when's the last time your mind was changed, or like has something switched for you? And we've had, I mean, I remember there was a really impactful moment when a listener had written in and shared about some of the language that we were using, the word psych psychotic.
Psychotic.
Now I
Mhm.
can't remember because I
Mm,
worked really hard to get it out of my language, and I think it was just, it's I like to over exaggerate in my terminology, and so it's like that's psychotic, this is psychotic. But this listener wrote in, and I just think that's so vulnerable, to take time to like write out what you're thinking to people who you're like, I don't know, I wasn't invited into their conversation, but I am listening, and just
yeah.
shared a lot about why that word has certain um meaning and feels like from someone who, from the mental health perspective, there's already this stigma around a state of psychosis, and when you use it to describe evil people, and when you're using it to sort of describe capitalism, and like because that's what that's a psychotic character, that
Mhm.
it's harmful because of the stigma. And that was so impactful, and we talked about it a bit. But I'm like, to me, I'm like, wow, I was so grateful for that moment. And we get other moments like that where people are really, you're like, oh, I'm really being listened to, and everybody wants to be heard and listened to. And I think that's a deep privilege, and we sort of, that's our responsibility as well as podcasters, I think, to be responsive. Obviously, you don't agree with everything that you hear, but I think it's our responsibility to take that in and either make a shift or address it or make a decision around it, you know?
Mhm.
Yeah.
And
Do you Oh,
I
go ahead.
fully I was just gonna say I fully believe that independent media can change minds and does regularly, and like I've seen it happen time and time again, and it can also enact real like material change. I've been working for the Lever for a year and a half, and when the train derailment in East Palestine took place, the Lever was like really on the forefront of writing really in depth reporting on what was it Northrop, whatever, I forget the name of the train company, but like
Yeah.
basically like their finances, who's giving the money, blah blah blah, and it blew up into like it was covered nationally, and it forced Pete Buttigieg to do his fucking job. And like he was not doing anything. And then it was like after a week of coverage, he was like, "Oh, I guess I got to go to East Palestine and like put on a hard hat and pretend like like I give a shit." So I've seen it in action. Um, yeah, I think
Mm.
it exists all over the place. I have a cousin who works in I have a cousin who works in well, actually I'm not going to say. But I have a cousin, and uh he's a big history nerd, and I sent him the Blowback podcast, which is one of my favorite podcasts. It's a
Oh, yeah.
historical narrative podcast that covers different uh US foreign intervention and foreign conflict. And my cousin, fairly liberal guy, I sent him Blowback, and like a week later he was like, "Man, America's just like one big fucking salty dick, isn't it? Like we're really just out there
Yep.
fucking shit up like for everybody. I didn't realize." And I was like, "Yeah, dog. Yeah." So
Yeah.
I totally, and I think it's crucial. I think it's crucial.
Um, it, gosh, I don't mean to put you on the spot, so you don't have to answer this outright. But do you have a favorite episode or guest or movie that again? Because the guests recommend the movies, right? Were you ever like,
Mhm.
Yes.
oh yes, this is gonna be my favorite, and then it was? Has that ever happened?
I don't know about favorites, but there are standout moments, I think, for me. And then like, well, there's films that I just am like, wow, I've never watched that. And I probably wasn't gonna tell anyone I've never watched it. Now I have to now I get to watch it, popular ones like
Right.
it's not out yet, but we just did Alien and
Mm.
Oh wow.
that was like a great conversation and I've never seen it. And now I'm like, what aliens? It's like my new talking point. If you come across me this
Wow.
week, I'll be like,
Have
have you ever seen Alien though?
have you guys ever heard of
Oh.
this movie?
Yeah,
Wow.
let me
Sir
tell
Ridley
you
Scott?
shot by shot. Yeah, exactly. So that was really cool, and then I would say, I mean, I think You've Got Mail just stood out in terms of just, like I said, that
Hmm.
destabilizing to rewatch,
Mhm.
and, yeah, but they've all been really good. Some movies are longer than others.
Some movies are longer than others.
Because we're watching, like, a lot of movies, but it's not like I feel like I have to watch something after I watch something for movies first, because it's not, like, relaxing watching, it's not hands off, you're, like,
Yeah,
thinking.
yeah, notes app open,
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
doing analysis.
Pausing,
Uh,
so it's at least, like, an hour longer than
mhm. I really loved our episode on the Matrix. Our
Oh,
guest
yeah.
Ren Mac was like wonderful. It was a great conversation. And then recently, we've been very, very fortunate to get to speak with filmmakers about their own work. So we had a really lovely conversation with Patricia Resnick, who is the screenwriter of 9 to 5,
Oh,
the
that was great, yeah.
the Jane Fonda, Lily Tomlin, Dolly Parton joint. And then we also got the chance to talk to Boots Riley about Sorry to Bother You, which was
Yeah.
unbelievable. So those were really cool. But there's something in every episode, I think.
Hmm.
About the Patricia Resnick episode, what was cool, to your point about, like, can this change how people see things? It was really cool to have this conversation from this point of view, and Patricia said after, like, I thought about," or maybe even said on the episode, like, "There's some things I just never thought about this movie, and I've been talking about it for 40 years, but because of, putting on this lens, it's like the first time certain things came out for me." And I think that's just like the power of any kind of criticism, as I think criticism has this negative connotation in our society, which is so unnecessary. It just means like looking at something differently.
I like that, and you guys often use that term through this lens. But I wonder, like, can you watch movies without that lens now, or are you ruined? Is it like everything you watch,
Mm.
you're like, this super capitalist or whatever? Like, can you just enjoy a movie?
Absolutely.
Okay,
I
And I
would say
you
regularly
turn
do.
that off.
Yeah, I mean, for the most part, unless something like jumps out at me, but
I don't, but I wouldn't.
okay,
No, but I would
brag.
say I think the part I think the part I turn off is the like writing it down.
Sure.
I'll probably be annoying and, like, be like, "I'm not gonna write this down, I'm gonna say all my thoughts to my partner as they come." But no, I think it's more that, like, I guess my point with that is just I don't think it's necessarily unenjoyable.
Yeah.
Like, I think I can, but like I said, I can, like, it's either notes app out or off. So I can, but I think it's always
Mm.
there in the backdrop. I'll give, like, a little teaser for an episode that we drop next week at our topical. Both Frank and I, watched, uh,
Oh my god.
the
Squid Game, the challenge, the
Oh, I
Squid
haven't seen it.
Game reality. You
Ugh.
don't need to. Honestly, no one should watch it.
Yeah,
No one should support
I'm
this.
not planning on it. So are there times where people recommend a movie and you're like, ah, I do not want to watch this. Like you normally would never have watched it,
um,
Mm.
or are
you
Yeah.
you
know,
like open to
yeah.
everything?
I mean, we watch everything.
we watch everything. We're open to everything. You know, we have like a basically a short list of movies that we feel fit within the framework of the show. But then we say to our guests like, hey, if you have an idea for a movie that's not on this list, like, you know, go with God. And I think probably a great example of that was our "Dude, Where's My Car" episode.
Yeah.
Our guest Devin Young
Yeah,
sent her the list.
out of nowhere.
Sent her the list, and you know, "Dude, Where's My Car" was not on the list, and she was like, "Cool, we're doing "Dude, Where's My Car," and I think Rivka and I were both like, "Okay, the fuck," and then
Yeah.
she came in with like a whole different perspective and analysis on it that we had not even considered, and it ended up being like a really illuminating conversation.
Yeah, it was a
And
good
that's
episode.
important too, because I think that sometimes with like anti-capitalist criticism, it's very easy to be like, it's this is how you see things this way through a Marxist through this way, and like things are either it's not black and white, like it's very gray, and there's so many different pieces of like that capitalism affects, and so it's not just talking about class, let's say. There's always things to critique around like the gender politics, the race politics, because it's all intersectional. And
Mhm.
so I think that that's really exciting too. Is like probably at this point, I'm like, honestly, any movie you can probably everything's political is the point. And anyone who thinks that you can get away from politics, I think is delusional because everything is shaped by this world that we're in. And therefore I would argue you could make any we at this point could probably, and that was kind of the "Dude, Where's My Car?" I was like, "Wow."
How about was Interstellar on your list? That was
I don't think
Jordan
it's
Yule.
that was Jordan mentioned Interstellar. We did The Social Network, but he
That's
mentioned,
right. Wow,
yeah.
see how I just totally rewrote that in my mind? You're right, it was The Social Network. That's right.
But that means that you were
Um,
really listening, Matt, because he did say on that episode, he said, you know, two movies that I always come back to are The Social Network
Mhm.
and Interstellar. So,
I love Interstellar
Interstellar's,
too.
man, I recently rewatched Interstellar for the first time since it had come out about like 6 months ago with my partner, and I was like, this is maybe one of the best movies of the
I don't
21st
think I've ever
century.
seen it.
I Rivka,
Is it Matt
I
Damon?
Great.
keep telling you to what
He's in it.
he is
He's
in
not
it.
it's not his movie, but he's in it. Yeah.
It's McConaughey.
It's great.
It was during the McConaissance.
There's a few
Okay,
movies
I love
where
him.
Michael Caine's there's a lot of people in it. It
Mhm.
was,
Anne Hathaway.
who's the
No.
guy in Dune? He's gonna be Willy Wonka. It was like one of his first,
Timothée
if not his
Chalamet's in
first.
it?
Yeah, he's in it.
Timothy's in it?
He is. Yeah, like a
Plays his
teenage
son.
Timothée.
Yeah.
Damn.
Mhm.
Yeah.
It's
I'll
very
watch
good.
this is
Casey
but
Affleck plays him. Yeah.
someone's gotta pick it for the pod, and then I'll come
Yeah.
on.
There's a few movies I'm like, I wonder if they're gonna do one of these. 'Cause I
Tell us
mean, I
your
have,
give us
like
your yeah,
What
give us
what
your
about you
pick.
what about you, Matt? Yeah, what movie would you pick
Yeah, what are you
or
gonna come on and do?
Mhm. You don't have to
oh,
commit to it
I
right now, but,
mean,
like,
Yeah.
what are some that at the top of your head?
I would do Killing Them Softly, Brad Pitt, Richard Jenkins, James Gandolfini, right? Scoot
Ooh.
McNairy.
I haven't seen that
Remember?
in a long
Mhm.
'Cause
time,
'cause
but
that
I
was
remember loving it.
that was the
Mhm.
George, V. Higgins novel from the '70s, Kogan's
Mhm.
Trade, and then when they made the movie, it's Dominic what's his name? It's the guy who did, Jesse James with Brad Pitt. I forget his name, but,
Oh, the
um,
director. Yeah, yeah,
w
yeah. I know what you're talking
yeah,
about.
when he took this on, he interspliced it. Have you seen it? I don't wanna ruin it.
I saw it,
Have you
Like
seen
a
I
long
think
time
I
ago.
think we were in college when it came out. When did it come out? Like
Mhm.
2008, 2009, something like that?
something like that? But he keeps putting Barack Obama's speeches throughout the movie.
Mm.
Ooh.
And so it's
Wow.
very and it has to do with, like, the gangster economy is based on, like, gambling, and what if somebody
Wow.
disrupted that, and the ins and outs of that, and then hiring a hitman, it's like, "Well, this guy's not available, so I'm gonna have this guy, but it's for a different rate." And it's like, "Well, a different rate?" It's like, "Yeah, and it's 2 guys, and I'm gonna do it." It's very capitalist. So I
Mhm.
would suggest that one. Miller's Crossing, that would be cool.
Oh,
Oh,
yeah,
yeah.
Miller's
That's a
Crossing
good
would be
one.
great.
I
And
haven't seen that
then,
since college either.
I have let me just look at my list of movies because I'm in an online film class. Do you know Matthew Film Guy from the Majority Report? I do his film class
Oh,
No.
online.
cool.
Oh, it's really fun. Yeah.
What is it like? You watch movies and like, what does the film class mean? Is it like
He
a
suggests movies. It started out at the in Queens at the Y, which is I think they call it Common Points, and I think it's in Queens. Maybe it's Brooklyn. I think it's Queens. Queens Common Points, and it was like a group of senior citizens who get together, watch a movie, and then discuss it. COVID hit, they put it online, and now anyone can join. And so I
Oh.
joined up, and it's really cool. You watch all these Criterion movies, right? Collections, and then discuss it. And you get all these great points of views because it's such a
Mm.
diverse group of movie watchers. It's really fun. So I always have like a long list of movies just referencing. A Falling Down would be a good one with
Oh my
Michael Douglas,
god. Yeah,
Robert
that
Duvall. That'd be a good one.
yes.
Mhm.
Because
Riv, have you ever seen
I
Falling
saw that
Down?
Mhm.
like as a kid in the 90s. I'm gonna be 49 next month, but like as a kid, I saw that movie and I was like rooting for that guy, and now I watch it and I'm like, ugh. And it's a
Mm.
whole new context.
Oh yeah, I
Modern
remember
times,
I
like
first saw
contemporary.
Falling Down when I was in middle school, and I remember I had a friend who just had a VHS of it, and his pitch to me was like, "Dude, this movie's so cool. It's about this guy who just like loses his mind, and then just starts. He gets a small gun, then he gets a bigger gun, then he gets an even bigger gun. He just goes on this rampage. It's awesome." And I was like, "Dude, that sounds so cool." And that's how speaking of the way our perspectives change, that's how I watched it when I was that
Yeah,
age. And then I remember seeing it when I was like an adult, and I was like, oh, this is about the way that the system, dominates and destroys our minds. This is
Mm.
a harrowing
yeah, and
tale.
like,
This is not a cool action
and
movie.
it's kind of the last time I watched it, I was like, oh, he's just realizing what white privilege is, because like by the end, he says, "Wait,
Wow.
I'm the bad guy." It's like, "Yeah,
Mm.
you're the bad guy, dude. You
Ooh.
just didn't realize it." And that was your chance
Hmm.
to not be the bad guy by,
Wow.
a little self-awareness, right? So, and yeah, and it there's a lot of things. I mean, look, don't get me going. This is an hour-long interview. I don't want to keep
We
you
just
all night.
we just spin this into our episode with you. So
Yeah,
we'll just
we're
yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
rolling
yeah,
into it,
awesome.
and
Yeah.
now we'll take over.
But like, I'd love to see your list though, because I'm interested to know what you have on there. I think that'd be fascinating. But
Yeah.
let me
And we're
ask
gonna
you
have you on, so you'll
something.
get it.
So you get
Oh,
the
that
yeah,
would be
you'll get a
great.
peek at the list. And it's fun because guests are
Oh
always
yeah.
like people will always be like, "You have to do this movie." And I'm like, "Okay, we'll put it on the list."
And I hope that you get to all of them. I hope this goes on for years and years and years, because it's one of my go-tos. I mean, it's my job to watch
That means a
podcasts,
lot. I mean, like you
but
said, it's nice to know that it's more encouraging when you're like, "Oh, I'm in conversation with people who really care and are
yeah.
being fed by it." So thank you.
Well, and I know your podcast is gonna be entertaining and informative. Like, it's everything. It covers all the bases. So it's not like, "Well, I wonder if they'll talk about movies this week, or is it gonna be mostly politics?" It's all of it. The
Mhm.
dynamics are balanced, and, you know, I think this whole interview is me getting the answer to how do you balance that dynamic. I mean, you guys are into it all, so it feels like it's very natural for you. So kudos to coming up with it and for doing it so well. And I'd love to come on. That'd be fantastic.
Yeah.
Yeah.
As
Yeah, you'll
we
get the
as
list.
we Oh yeah, I want to see that list. I love movie lists. My top 3 is like I'm always like rotating out the number 3 movie for something else. Like I can
What are
never
top
like
2
decide on what
then?
my top 3. Uh they're not like, well, I don't know. Empire Strikes Back and Raising Arizona. Those are the 2
Oh,
movies I can just keep watching over and over and
yeah.
over and over
Great
and
choice.
never get tired.
Raising Arizona is great.
I love that movie. Yeah.
Mhm.
It's one
Wow.
of those things where I just crack up all the time. But then it's either like Stand by Me or Inherent Vice. Like I can't land on a number
I
Ooh.
3
love that.
ever. It's so
Wow.
random.
Mhm.
Mm.
Um, but the rest of the time, I'm reading comic books. And when we're not talking about politics and the news and online media, here we talk about comic books. Have you guys ever read comics?
No.
I
Like I've had friends who have had comics and I've leafed through them, but I've never been like, I'm gonna go seek out comics.
Yeah, not seriously. One of our good friends who was also on the podcast is a amazing I guess you would say illustrator, right? Is that the correct
Yeah,
terminology?
illustrator,
Yeah.
animator.
Illustrator,
Essentially,
animator. So fan of, but no, I've never been super into comic books.
I mean,
Okay.
I've read Watchmen, but like everyone's read
Oh, okay.
Watchmen, you know.
Yeah. Still, that's not like an easy comic to read. But that's one of the reasons why I never let my guests off the hook without recommending one, is because I want to continue to um, educate people on how comics are so much more than just, the latest movie franchise from Marvel or whatever, right? And a lot of people think it's just superheroes, kid stuff, capes and masks. So I've got one for you. I think you're gonna dig this.
Ooh.
Okay.
Okay. Taking out my pen and paper.
It's called, and I always put them online the next day, and I'll tag everyone and the creators. It's called The Fade Out, and you can get the complete collection in a single book. The series is over, so it's not something you have to commit to for the rest of your life. It's not a monthly ongoing serial or anything like that. It's by Ed Brubaker and Sean Phillips. Now, these guys are frequent collaborators. So if you like this, there's a ton of stuff that you can get by them. And they're known for doing just one-off books like graphic novels. So again, not something you have to commit to
Okay.
or, break the bank on. The Fade Out is basically a classic film noir done as a comic book. Set in Hollywood and taking place during the earliest days of the Blacklist, it's a murder mystery story described as a picture
Ooh.
perfect recreation of a lost era. So, if
Oh yeah.
you guys are movie buffs, I'm sure
Wow.
you
I
like
feel
film
like you
noir,
just,
right?
that's like when you go and someone's like, I made a specialty cocktail for you. This is very,
Yes. Thank you.
very
Yeah.
exciting.
I'm a comic bookologist over here. But
Yeah.
and
So
like
these
I
are
said,
these are
they're
specialized recommendations. You're not
yeah.
recommending the
Yeah, yeah,
fade
yeah.
out
No,
to
this
every
wouldn't be
guest.
for, this
Wow.
is
No, I had
just
to really think
us.
about it.
Wow.
Yeah. Like, can you
So
imagine what am
cool.
I gonna recommend to Harvey K? Right?
We'll
Oof.
tune in to find out. That's,
Yeah.
yeah.
I figured it out. I did figure it out, and I have a
Okay.
backup. And I have a comic book I'm gonna tell him about that he may not he probably is aware of it, but, um, I don't wanna spoil it. I'm sure do you think
Okay.
he's
We'll tune
listening?
in. You never
It's
know.
Uh,
possible.
I don't
It's
Harvey's
wanna ruin it.
possible.
everywhere.
Anyway,
Yeah.
anyway, I do like to tell people, like, "Did you know your hero had a comic book?" and blah, 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 and,
Oh,
like, let people
cool.
know that it's it's the juxtaposition of words and images that really help to convey messages clearly and legibly. You know what I mean? And yeah, it's fun to watch Batman beat up villains. I dig that. But there's so much more out there. Like when Nina Turner was on, I recommended a comic book to her called Our Numbers Be Unlimited about unions by this guy in Melbourne, Australia, who tells most of it's the history of unions, but also his personal experiences working in an Amazon factory or
Oh
warehouse.
wow.
And
Oh, wait.
so
I'll be
it's
What was
right
the
like
name
back.
of this again? Say this again.
I
Our
will be right
numbers.
back. This is important. This has to do with
Our
what you're talking
Numbers
about.
Be Unlimited by Sam Wallman. And Sam
Okay.
Wallman's great. He's on his website. You can download art for free to use for labor organizing in your workplace, like professional artwork with the slogans on
That's
there and everything.
amazing.
You could
That's
print it
so
out and then
cool.
just hand write, Wednesday meeting, break room, 7 p.m., whatever. But yeah. Yeah,
Okay.
Sam Wallman, he's great. Oh, you got one?
So this I haven't read
Oh,
yet,
cool.
but
There you go.
my
Yeah.
father and gave it to me, and this is
Wow.
a graphic novel,
There
and
you go. Yeah,
it's
perfect.
Marks for Beginners.
There you go. That's
So
okay.
I
So
do
you
have
have read
one.
comics. Yeah, it's great.
I mean, I haven't
Oh,
read it yet is the
Awesome.
problem, but
What
this
year
is
is
my
that
goal
from?
for, yeah, this is old. Um, it's not
yeah.
right
Huh.
yet.
There's some sepia toned pages.
These are some sepia tone but I'll find it's marked by
People try to fake that all the time, but you can't fake the real thing.
this is
I've tried to
not.
do it for production. You soak it in like
Yeah.
tea or you like rub coffee grounds on it or something.
Right.
No, this is not
Oh,
faked.
that's
This is
cool.
very like,
Oh,
yeah.
wow.
That's
So
beautiful.
you're inspiring me to get
Awesome.
into it's from a Pantheon documentary comic book.
Oh, cool.
Mhm.
Yeah, documentary comic
see
books
what-
are a real thing. There's a guy, Box Brown. Do you know Box Brown? Have you heard of
No.
him? I
Mm-mm.
interviewed him. He does a comic book called The He-Man Effect, which basically describes how the marketing of toys in the 80s shaped like the way we buy things, the way we want things we don't need, the way they're marketed toward us,
Wow.
and politics and it's all there. He's a fascinating guy, but his comics are referred to as comic book documentaries because it's
Interesting.
so fact-based and it's told in that way that it's exactly like a documentary, you know? So,
Mhm.
yeah.
Well, I
But this
can't
was
find when
great.
this was made, but it was purchased
Looks
for
ancient, though.
$2.95, which makes me think it was
Oh,
it's
yeah.
old.
Mhm.
But you've inspired me to. I'm like, it's been, when you get something and you're like, I really like it and it's been sitting there, but now I'm actually cracking it open and it's like
See?
unreal. And then Frank, it's like crazy.
You're hooked.
Tight.
All right.
All that old political art is so cool. Love
Mhm.
it. Well, look, this was fantastic. Thank you so much for coming on. This was a pleasure for me. And it's one of those interviews where I just want to listen to you talk. So I could have sat here for another couple hours. And it's weird because that happens to me sometimes. I watch the content, then I have him on as guests, and I forget that I'm not watching. I'm supposed to be interacting because it's like, oh, this isn't the show. They're here now. So that happens all the time. It happened a few times tonight. So forgive me if I zoned out or looked like I did. I was listening. But thank you so much for coming on. Is there anything that you want to plug before we wrap?
I mean, just check out the podcast at mvcpod.com. And yeah, thank you so much for having
Yeah,
us
this
on.
was so much fun.
Sure.
Thanks
This
for
is so much
drawing
fun.
Yeah.
us.
Thank you for drawing
Yeah.
us.
So,
And
yeah,
and
no
we'll have
problem.
you on our show as well. And
Great.
this was such a pleasure. Matt, you're really good at this. This is like a really warm,
Oh, thanks.
just like a really warm environment. I feel like we're just like hanging out like in front of a fire with like some wine or something.
Yeah, I
So
just got up and ran
That's-
in the other room to show you my comic book.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. I mean, just think back in hindsight, it wouldn't have been that weird if you were sitting there cooking your dinner, right? That
I guess
would
so.
have been totally normal. But
Although my partner
anyway,
and all my pets would be in the background, so it would be a little
Yeah.
distracting.
Well, your link tree is in the description of this podcast. I encourage everyone listening and everyone watching this on a replay to check that out. Support the lever, support movies versus capitalism. Rivka, Frank, you guys are awesome. Thank you so much for being here, and we'll see everyone next time.
Thanks so much, Matt.
thank you.
The letter hack. Oh my God.